Now, let's look at the idea of entering into the legs now from top position. We've made a pretty concerted study of entering into the legs from bottom. Now we've got to be effective from top. How we enter into our opponent's legs will largely depend upon whether he's in a seated or a supine position. If my opponent's in seated position, that's one thing. If he's in supine, that's another. Let's look first at the idea of entering into the legs in supine positions, like so. Okay? You guys already know from earlier in the DVD, I'm a big proponent of what we call 2-on-1 gripping, where two of my limbs control one of my opponent's limbs. This always creates some sense of mechanical advantage. Okay? Now, let's talk a little bit about the use of 2-on-1s when we work here. So often I see people look to get a hold of their opponent's leg and scoop up an Achilles grip, like so, and control their opponent. Okay? This immediately conveys what your intention is to your opponent. Okay? It's very easy for my opponent to put his second foot on my hip, lift his hips and turn his toes outwards and kick his foot free. It's not a particularly strong grip when I just hold with one leg. Okay? Why? Because my opponent's knee is not controlled at all. As a result, the knee can flare outwards and then pull back, and he easily slips out. Okay? And you can end up looking a little bit silly. Grab someone's leg, he just quickly kicks out, and you're like, there goes my leg lock. Okay? So that's one problem, grip. The second problem is always distance. Okay? So often I see people secure a leg and they do a poor job penetrating with the feet. So that when they go to sit back on their training partner's legs, they end up with their hips far too far away from their opponent. As a result, the sit back has a clumsy look to it where they really do fall back rather than sit back. And as a result, your opponent times the turnout of his foot, and you end up with slippage and a disastrous looking result. Okay? Remember, you're in top position, so if you're going to sit back for a leg, you've got to do so in a way where you do good work and you finish people, because if you do lose it, you've just gone from top to bottom position. So we need to do a good job of entering into the legs if we're going to sit back from top position. Let's look at gripping strategies done properly, 2-on-1 gripping, and what's the proper way to penetrate to get through to the leg successfully. When my opponent's in a supine position, I generally like to use a 2-on-1 grip where I simply hold my opponent's heel. This does not convey any kind of leg lock intention. This could easily be any other form of guard passing grip, for example, toreando, leg drags, etc., etc. Okay? So I just hold my training partner's heel. Now, when I go to step in on my training partner, I must make sure that my foot penetrates all the way past my training partner's hip line. Don't step up to the line of your training partner's buttocks. Instead, step past to his hip line. Okay? Now from here, when I make my movement, I put in a 2-on-1 grip. My second hand comes down. Make sure you reduce the distance of your hips to the floor. If I fall from a height, it's going to be a clumsy fall, it's going to be a long fall, and there's a good chance your grip will be dislodged when you impact hard with the mat. So what I do is I lower my level so that my hips are the same height as my opponent's knees. That's very important. There has to be a level change down, hips to knees. So I catch in just like so. Now I'm going to step my foot to the hip line. Don't step up to the buttocks, step to the hip line. And as a result, when we sit, my legs end up in perfect position, hip to hip, and I've got a barrier in front of my opponent. So if he tries to come up to top position, I can push back and prevent him getting top position. If I fall too far back, not only have I lost control of the leg, I've lost the knee outside my knee line, but there's no reason now why he can't simply sit up and forward and come up and take top position on me. We have to penetrate to the hip line to prevent sit-ups. Okay? At the same time, I need 2-on-1 to control my opponent's knee and prevent him turning his foot out and slipping the leg free. Once again, I have a supine opponent in front of me. I go in on my training partner and I catch the leg. My first step is in, and there's a level change as I catch, so that my hips are now the same height as my training partner's knees. As I go over the top, I don't lock in straight from the start. I just hold and I step up to my training partner's hip line. When I make that step, We're in good position to get the attack now. Now, from here, it's a simple thing for us to start exposing heels and locking up legs. We go to roll through and find ourselves in a winning position. This is a good way to attack the straight ashigarami. What about cross ashigarami? Can I use a setback there? Absolutely. And many of the same themes hold true. Again, we have a supine opponent. This time, instead of going inside the legs, we work from outside the legs. Again, I have to step all the way up to the line of my training partner's hips. Once again, I have to level change so my hips are the height of his knees. So I make my initial step and I take a 2-on-1 grip. I level change so my hips are nice and low, and then my second foot gets ready to fall. As I make the fall, I'm already releasing and covering the toes, so that as we make a sit back, we're in perfect position to pass the foot to the inside, and we've got the heel ready to go. Once again, my 2-on-1 grip is different. In the previous move, we gripped the outside of the knee. Now, we're gripping inside the knee. We move forward on our training partner. I catch. I step to the hip line and take the 2-on-1, level changing down to the height of the knees. Now we're in the perfect position to make our sit. As the sit goes in, I reposition and capture my training partner's heel. Now, as I sit back, my leg goes over the top and the heel is stuck. We're in the perfect position now to go through into a finish. We're looking at entering into the legs from top position. Let's look now at a situation where I'm inside my opponent's legs. He has an open guard, but I'm working from the inside. Okay, so he's in a supine position, and however it's happened, we've opened up our training partner's guard and we're ready to play. From here, very often we'll work with scoop grips on our training partner. This is an outstanding grip for passing our training partner's legs. Okay, as a general rule, when we go to pass somebody's legs, we want his legs propped up on our shoulders. That maximizes our driving pressure, creates good pressure on the man on bottom, and facilitates a lot of passes. Your opponents know that, and so they will often ensure that they keep their leg on your arm rather than the desired shoulder position. And as a result, it's very hard now to get effective passing pressure. Okay, whenever we see our opponent doing this, attacking the legs is often a very good option. Okay, very often from here, as I work to get the leg up to my shoulder and fail, I'm going to take a standing position. I'm going to post either on my training partner's chest or the floor. I'm going to focus on getting my opponent's leg controlled both below the knee and above the knee, with a grip very similar to the one we use from X-Guard. Now from here, as I post on my training partner's upper body, I'm going to take my knee and I'm going to slide across my training partner's adductor muscles. The way I do this is off the post, I pick my foot up and I strike my training partner's hamstring with my shoelaces. And as a result, my knee goes rapidly to the floor. Now I hike my arm up and I control my training partner's ankle. We're in the perfect position now to put our hand to the floor, and my left foot goes back and around and touches my training partner's buttocks. Now we're in the perfect position to spin around our training partner's leg, and from here put that wedge in behind my training partner's knee. From here, so many ways for us to go. We can sit across for the secondary leg, we can sit back into versions of knee bars, or we can cover our training partner's foot and go immediately into a heel hook type situation. Once again, we have an opponent and we've managed to get inside the legs and open up the guard. We get a good catch on our training partner's leg. From here, we come up to a standing position. Now I post on my training partner's upper body. As my weight comes forward, I cut around the corner by picking my right foot up and driving my knee to the floor. I come all the way up to the ankle, post, and my left foot goes around the corner to the buttocks. I need to get my knee from here to a wedge behind his knee. So I start the action of turning. I extract my leg and my knee goes in as a wedge. We're in the perfect position now to go across the secondary leg and get into a winning position. Let's continue with entries into the legs from top position. We just looked at an inside out entry where we started inside our opponent's legs and we spun to the outside. Let's look at the exact opposite. This time we're going to move to the outside and spin to the inside. Again, we have a supine opponent, and again we've managed to achieve a scoop grip on our training partner's leg. From here, unlike the previous move, we don't have the leg on the bicep. We've managed to jack the lower leg up to the shoulder. From here, my second hand pins my training partner's leg down to the floor and I post on my training partner's chest. I come up into a tripod position. Because most of my weight is on my hands, this is a very good movement position where my feet feel light because my hands bear most of my weight. As a result, I can take my right foot and step in such a way that my toes face in this direction. So I started with my toes facing my opponent's head, and then in one motion, my toes face away from the head. You'll see that my opponent's leg passes across my chest as I perform this movement. It's a very quick kind of movement where we're playing open guard, and then in one motion I post on my training partner's knee. I make sure I don't naively put my hand here where I can be pulled into triangles. We make sure we tilt our training partner's knee towards the floor, and I keep my fingers behind the hamstring. Now from here I go forward and post. I pop up, and then in one motion I start that action of stepping around my training partner's hip line. As I go around the hip line, I'm going to hug my training partner's leg, and I'm going to fall on the same side I started on. As a result, we're able to get to a good attacking position where the leg is well controlled by a 2-on-1 grip. From here, I shift my hips out and we're in the perfect position to cover our training partner's ankle and get into a winning position. Once again, from a different angle, we have an opponent working in bottom position. We go through and we secure this scoop grip. We force the second leg down towards the floor, we post the upper body, and we pop up into a tripod position. Now from here I go around the corner and I get my right foot facing away from my opponent's head. As a result, we have a perfect 2-on-1 grip. I shift my hips. We find ourselves now in the perfect position to reach back, touch the thumb to our own back, and go into a nice win. Facing this time in this direction. From here, it's very important if I go after my opponent's right leg that I finish on his right hand side. I don't want to fall across his body. So we go in, we get our opponent's leg in a scoop grip, we pop up and find ourselves in a high tripod. I move around the corner and my foot faces back and away. As a result, we get a good catch on the legs. Shift our hips out, my knees point at his chest, and we're in the perfect position now to go into the heel hook. Another excellent way to go into the legs from top position involves an outside step in. All of my students excel in this move, but in particular Nicky Ryan uses it with tremendous success. When my opponent is in a supine position and we're standing over him, there are a number of ways, make strong legs like so, there are a number of ways for us to start gaining an angle on our training partner. I can have, for example, 2 hands underneath my training partner's legs. I may well have 2 hands on shins, or hands on my training partner's knees, one outside, one inside. Or I may have a hand on my training partner's hip and a hand on the knee. All of those variations are highly effective. I'll demonstrate it out of a grip here like so, but any one of the grips I just demonstrated will be equally effective. As we move on our training partner, we start off lined up with our training partner like so. I have no advantageous angle here. My opponent can use his feet, both of them, very effectively against me because I'm lined up with him. So a good tactic on our part is to move towards our training partner and start off with a step that guides his legs to the outside, just like so. We now have a good attacking angle that my opponent has to react to. If he doesn't, this is a pretty easy position to pass from. Now, from here, I'm going to take my hand and I'm just going to get a hold of my training partner's knee, just like so that my knee becomes an effective wedge underneath his leg. Then my hand becomes a wedge so that both sides of the leg, the hamstring and the quadricep, are controlled by wedges. One is a hand, one is a knee. I level change down towards my opponent. So as always, I want my hips the same height as my training partner's knees. Once again, we move in on an opponent. Here, we're lined up with them. That's not really desirable. I sidestep, and at the same time, I take a hold of my training partner's legs, and I create an angle by pushing his knees across the center line. From here, we catch, level change down, and my hand comes in like so. Okay. I now want to take my foot and step inside my training partner's legs. Okay. So as the hand comes down, I bring my knee up like so. As I go down to my hip, it's a relatively simple thing to pass my foot through to an inside position. And now we're right into our training partner's legs, ready to go. Once again, we move in towards an opponent. We get any form of grip you like. All of them are good. From here, we move the legs to the side off our side step. And as a result, we get that wedging effect that we're looking for. We're in the perfect position now to step our foot in. I don't recommend standing tall and trying to throw your foot in like this. All he has to do is pull his knee and you end up looking like a disaster. Instead, we move in on our training partner, we get that initial angle and wedge. We come down nice and low and base to the floor. If you're worried about your lack of flexibility to get the foot in, don't. Just put your knee in. Sit and 2 knees pinch. The foot can always come afterwards. However, if you're a little more flexible, it's not a difficult thing to come in, and from this position we post the hand and I take my foot right over his hip. I put the weight on the right hand so my foot goes over the hip and directly inside. So we come in, we pass the legs to the outside. We catch, we post the floor, my body weight comes forward, my hips are the same height as his knee, and my foot comes forward and over and into the hip. And as a result, we get a good winning position. One more time. We approach a supine opponent. From here, we start by getting the advantageous angle we want. Now everything comes down and we lock immediately into the legs. We're looking at the question of entering the legs from top position. So far, everything we've done has been from open guards, okay, whether we're standing or down on the knees. Now let's start to transfer our attention to half guard. I'm going to show 3 different entries into the legs from half guard top. All 3 work extremely well. Because they work extremely well as a combination, I'm going to show the 3 together. So 3 different techniques in one take. First, let's look at the half guard situation in general. My opponent's down, he has my right leg trapped, we'll put the head here. And my opponent has a generic half guard like so. Most people believe that from the point of view of the 2 athletes, the guy with an underhook in this position is generally dominant. Okay, like most cliches, there's some falsehood there. It's not as simple as that, but there's a lot of truth too. Okay, if my opponent does have this underhook, there's a lot of good movements he can perform in this position. If I have the underhook, it's very easy for me to put my opponent's shoulder down to the mat and start to flatten the 2 shoulders down, and it's a strong passing position. Okay, so it's not as simple as whoever has the underhook is winning, but it's not a bad oversimplification. There's a lot of truth to it. Okay, now how does this affect how we're going to operate in the leg lock game? Okay, the first entry that we're going to look at in this leg lock situation is one where my opponent's top leg is not locked. He is not locked to triangle. It might be because he's using a knee shield. It might be because he's interested in pommeling into a half butterfly guard. For whatever reason, the leg is not locked. Okay, and from the situation, I'm going to use a reach back where as I lose the battle for the underhook, he starts taking underhook on me, I'm going to scoop grip his leg. So as I lose one form of underhook, I gain another. Okay, so here we are, we're in bottom position. Okay, from here I see my opponent pommeling in and taking an underhook. If I don't react, he'll take that full underhook and now he can start off balancing me. Okay, so as I feel and losing the underhook battle, I'll go through and scoop grip my training partner's leg. Okay, now I'm going to take my hand underneath his underhooking arm and I'm going to use it as a post down on the floor. I'm going to take my knee across my training partner's hip line, just like so, and put weight on my training partner. From here, my right foot repositions to my opponent's buttocks at the center line. I'm going to take my hand out further, a second step on the hand, and I'm going to turn the corner of my training partner and focus on getting my knee as a wedge right where my wrist is. So as I pin his leg in place, my right foot and my left hand take the weight, and I just sit, and my knee comes in as a wedge. We're in the perfect position now to make a choice. I can go straight for my training partner's heel and turn it into a heel hook, or I can go straight across to the second ankle, tie up my opponent's secondary leg, and look to control things first before I go back into heel hooking. Let's have a look at that from a different angle. From a situation where I find myself in a generic half guard type situation like so, I see my opponent palming for an underhook and I feel he's winning that battle. I withdraw my elbow and scoop on through, and I take a scoop grip as a counter to his upper body underhook. I take my left hand and punch it through down to the floor. As a result, I can pop up, put my knee across my training partner's hip line. I reposition my hand, reposition my foot, and I'm in the perfect position now to start a turning action that gets my legs in behind in a wedging position. If I seize my training partner by the heel, it's always the same gambit. I point my knees at my training partner's chest, and as a result, I quickly get into a heel hook situation. If, on the other hand, I'm looking for more of a sense of slowing things down and getting control, I'll do a 2-on-1 grip on the secondary leg and tie things up in a fashion that we so often use. This is one great way for us to enter into the legs. This is a knee slide across your opponent's hip line. It's not the only way of working. Sometimes you're in gear and you feel your opponent has a strong grip and the legs are locked, and you feel he's not really trying to fight the upper body battle. Rather, he's got his elbows in close, and from here, neither one of you has any kind of strong upper body grip on the other. He's got tight legs, but nothing in the upper body. You don't have an upper body grip on him, and he doesn't have an upper body grip on you. Okay? In this situation, a move which I'll often make use of is one where I reach and I catch my training partner's wrist on this side. Okay? Now, from here, I sit upright. That's a little unusual. Normally we're getting down chest to chest, but I sit upright here. Holding on to my training partner's wrist, I'm going to put my leg up. And in one motion, I'm going to step my foot all the way through down to my training partner's buttocks on the other side. I don't slide through, I step over. Now, I catch my training partner at the heel. I unlock my training partner's feet and I control both legs. Now, I step my right foot around the corner and lock. We're in the perfect position now to use the lifting method to lock up my training partner's legs and fall to the same side that we were already on and apply the outside ashigarami, outside heel hook for the finish. Once again, we have an opponent. He's got a good bite on the half guard, but on the other hand, neither one of us has a good bite on the upper body. He's got his arm well bent, so it's hard for me to get underhook, but on the other hand, he's not underhooking me either. Okay, so in this kind of general situation, neither one of us has any kind of serious upper body grip going on. I reach through and I catch my training partner at the wrist so that he can't catch my leg as I go to step over. I bring my leg out wide, and as my upper body rises, my foot is going to come through all the way to my training partner's tailbone and lower back. So as a result, we get a quick step over. Now, I reach down and I grab the exposed leg. Catching it, I use a 2-on-1 grip and expose the knee all the way up here by my chest. Now my second foot comes around the corner like so. From here I use the lifting method that we saw earlier in the instructional and lock up on my training partner's ankle. Don't want to fall backwards, never want to fall across the body in this position. Instead, from here it's a simple thing to bring our knees down to the floor on the same side that we were already on, and from here we know what to do. We've got the strong braking position. So that would be a good example of a step over. We've seen the idea of sliding across our opponent's hip line. Now we've seen the idea of stepping around the head. Let's look at a third method of entering the legs from top half guard, the back step method. This happens to be my favorite and also the favorite of most of my students. Now, this time, I'm going to do things a little differently. From a generic half guard situation, he has my knee trapped between his legs. That's good for him, it's not good for me. Okay, it didn't interrupt the previous moves, but it will interrupt the move that we're about to look at now. You can't backstep with your knee trapped. So our first thing in this situation, as he plays in this position, is we're going to take our body and turn, and we're going to pop up, and we're going to free the knee of the trapped leg. Now, I gave him an underhook, right? Because my hands are on the floor. If he starts digging for that underhook, I don't care. My knee's in a good enough position now. There's my left hand. My right hand goes to my left hand, like so. As a result, I'm in perfect position to take my knee and backstep and put my knee as a wedge behind my training partner's knee, just like so. When he goes to move his top leg, it's wedged by both of my legs. There's no reason now why I can't put my foot on the floor, catch the other leg, and fall across his body. And as a result, we end up in our favorite attacking position. Once again, we start off in a fairly generic half guard type situation. From here, look how I use a turn and a pop up to free the knee of my trapped leg. Now that pop up, it came at a price. There's no reason why I can't take an underhook. However, for the purpose of the move we're about to look at, I don't need underhooks. That doesn't influence things. I have my left hand on the floor, my right hand comes to my left hand. I reposition the left, I high leg, back step, and wedge my opponent's legs. When he tries to take his leg out, there's wedges on both sides, the best kind of wedging. From here, I catch the second leg, elevate, fall, and end up in one of our favorite attacking positions. These three methods, backstepping, sliding across the hip line, and stepping around the head, form an incredibly effective combination of methods of attacking the legs in top half guard and getting through to some of our favorite breaking positions. Now we're looking at entering into our opponent's legs from top position. So far, most of the entries have been on supine opponents lying on their back. But we should be able to effectively enter into the legs regardless of whether my opponent is supine or seated. One of our favorite methods of entering into the legs on seated opponents is a variation of a move which I actually don't allow in my gym in live training. This is Kani Basami. This is a flying scissor throw done in the standing position. The standing, flying versions of it are inherently very unsafe. We use them in competition, we drill them, but we don't allow them in live training as the injury rate is unacceptably high. However, Kani Basami can be modified down on the ground where it's completely safe because my opponent's weight is on his buttocks rather than his legs. As a result, there's no danger of any kind of injury when I set into a scissoring action over my training partner's legs. Let's have a look at how we use Kani Basami on a seated opponent. We'll have a training partner down like so. I stand in front of my training partner, and as always from here, I start measuring distance with my hand. Okay, I step up to my training partner's toe line. I'm looking to step in. That means it's good from my perspective to capture either one of my opponent's hands or wrists. I don't want him grabbing me with both legs. In one motion, I'm going to start stepping in on my training partner, blocking a hand on either side and getting my foot across like so. What I want to do here is create weight over my opponent's right hand side. Why? What's the importance of that? Let's look at our training partner's posture facing the camera. Whenever I off balance my opponent to one side, the opposite knee will rise. A common problem with Kani Basami is the knees will be very far apart, and it's hard for me to get a wedge behind my opponent's knee. However, if I make my opponent tilt to my opponent's right, watch his left knee. It will always rise, and as a result, I'm going to be able to get the Kani Basami leg in as a wedge. So, as I start off with my training partner, we're in front just like so. I post, I go in on my training partner, I grip either one of my training partner's wrists, and I step in here and I push so his hand goes to the mat. That makes the leg that's behind me rise. As a result, I can go through, bring my head next to his head, and capture my training partner's ankle. Now we're going to start a back step, and I'm going to level change down so that my hips are the same height as his knees. As a result, we can bring that wedge in and drop our training partner straight into one of our favorite attacking positions, the lace leg ashigarami, where we have very good control, and now we can go into our inside heel hook series. Once again, we start off in front of a training partner on the mat. As we go in, we start measuring distance, etc., etc. From here I start tying up. I start an action of pushing and stepping. That raises the leg that's behind me and makes it relatively simple for me to go in on my training partner and catch and form that tight wedge around my training partner's body. It's a simple thing now to thread the leg over the top, tie up the secondary leg, and now from here return back up into a winning position. Let's change our focus now to a position which I believe anyone who's interested in deeply studying the leg lock game must invest a large amount of their training time in. This is the double seated position, where both athletes are seated in front of each other. I know that in contemporary jiu-jitsu circles, this position often gets a lot of ridicule. People see, oh, they're two guys butt scooting in front of each other, this is not fighting, this is not jiu-jitsu, or what have you. Whatever one thinks of the position, the reality is this. If you want to become good at leg locks, you got to play a lot of time in this position. The deeper you go into the leg locking game, the more time you're going to spend here in competition and even in sparring in the gym. First, what is double seated position and what do we need in order to excel at it? Well, as the name implies, both of us are sitting down. Okay, we can have a range of different foot positions. I could, for example, have both my feet in the inside position. That would be great for me, terrible for him. Okay, he could have both his feet in the inside position. That would be great for him, terrible for me. And most of the time, we find ourselves in a situation where we both have one foot in each. Okay, where it's kind of neutral, and we have to do some work in order to gain advantage and start leg locking people. Okay, let's notice first the distance between the two athletes. We know from earlier in this instructional series that the measure of distance for actually breaking someone is the measurement of my opponent's knee relative to my knee line. Now you can see that in a double seated position, my opponent's knees, both of them, are well outside of my knee line. So there's no immediate danger of leg locking for either one of us. For me to get into my opponent's legs, I'm going to have to take two things. First, inside position, and a significant movement forward towards my opponent's knee so that I can bring it inside my knee line. Okay? That's one of the reasons why this double-seated position is so important in your development in the leg lock game, because it starts to get you thinking in terms of inside position and the distance game. Two crucial concepts for control here. It will also bring in so many other disparate elements that we've seen throughout this instructional series. The idea of two-on-one gripping, for example. I'll show you more as we get into position. Okay? Let's start off in a generic situation where both of us have one foot in each, and our knees are in front of each other's knees. So neither one of us has the distance, neither one of us has domination of inside position. We're going to have to do some work to actually get a submission in this position. Okay? First, I like to prevent my opponent from pommeling his legs. If I don't monitor his foot, he can easily pommel in, and now he's got double inside position. That's not good. So the first thing I do is I get a hold of my training partner's ankle and I hug it to my hip and butt. When he goes to pommel the leg now, it's tough. When he does the same thing to me on the other side, I have to get used to the idea of breaking his grips. So I take my free hand, I go forward, and I break his grip. The moment I go to break his grip, I want to pommel to the inside position. Here's a common mistake that I often see. People pommel the foot to the inside position, but they place their foot poorly in a symmetrical position relative to their opponent. There's absolutely no reason now why my opponent can't simply re-pommel and we're right back where we started. That's no good. Okay. So once I break my training partner's grip, I never pommel to a straight buttock position where my left foot goes to my opponent's right buttock. We always pommel to the cross buttock position where my left foot goes to his left buttock. Now, the gap between my knees is so small that when he tries to pommel his legs in, it's very difficult and very easy to remove. As opposed to a straight buttock pommel where the gap between my knees is huge. You could drive a truck through that gap. And now he pommels in easily, re-pommels through, kicks through, and now I'm in trouble. Okay? So once we break our training partner's grip, we go through on our training partner and we make sure we have 2 feet together, 2 knees close together, and a cross buttock position. From cross buttock, no sense in hanging around. He's probably going to try to pommel his foot to the inside. We make it difficult by closing our knees. We use a hand assist to remove, and then immediately it's time to go on the attack. I take a 2-on-1 grip, just in like so. Now I use my feet to pull my body forward. Resist the temptation to put hands on the ground. Now you no longer control your opponent's foot, and he can start pommeling, and as you try to move in, you lose the whole position. Okay? Keep your hands where they are. 2-on-1 grip is valuable. Keep it. Don't give it away. Use your feet to move up to his knee line. Now from here, we punch through, and as a result, we're in perfect position to go on the attack. We know we need to expose his heel, so what do you think he's going to do? The exact opposite. He's going to hide his heel. So we need to use our foot, as we saw earlier in the instructional, and pass it across the center line. Now we're in a position to start rolling through, and we get the heel hook win. So this would be one good example of operating in this position. We started off fairly neutral. He had me and I had him. We broke a grip. We pommeled correctly, 2 feet under 1 leg. Cross buttock position. 2-on-1 grip. Distance game. I use my feet to pull myself forward. As a result, we can go immediately into a good attack. Now, we generate heel exposure by passing the foot across the center line. Once we get that heel exposure, we trap the far hip, rotate through, and we're in the perfect winning position. Now, that's only the tip of the iceberg of this position. There's 1,000 other things we can do here. Let's start to bring in some of the main concepts we work with in this double-seated position. Once we start off in positions like this, it's not always easy for us to always get 2 feet to the inside position. Sometimes we'll engage in a very different form of attack. In the previous move, I pommeled to inside position and I went after my training partner's left leg. Another option, once I've broken my training partner's grips, is to pommel to what seems to be the wrong leg and transfer across. So I was, instead of ending up here, I pommeled and I brought the first foot across. Now I'm going to fold my leg through underneath, and we're going to come up leaning towards our training partner. I usually recommend, when we make a lean towards our training partner, that we secure a collar tie. It's safe for me to do this because my knee is in the inside position. If my knees were down and I started reaching, my opponent would go to arm locks, etc., etc. Okay? But because the knee is up, we're fine. We're going to heist and come up to a kneeling position. Now we're in the perfect situation to pop up, release our training partner's collar, and from here I backstep and I use a hand assist to pull my training partner's knee in, and we end up with a nice kane basami down on the floor. Once again, we start off neutral. We break our training partner's grip, we pommel to an inside position and switch our 2 feet. Now I fold my foot underneath my training partner, I come forward, a post hand on the floor and a collar tie. As a result, it's not hard for us to heist up to a knee. Now from this position I go up and change my levels over his knee. Instead of gripping here, I go through and I use a reach back that pulls my opponent's leg into a perfect kane basami. This would be another example of working in this position. Another very commonly seen move. Same situation. We break grips, we pommel in, we go cross buttock. This time we come up and we threaten an initial attack on my training partner. So it appears the threat, relax, it appears the threat is on my training partner's left leg. Now from here, as I make a substantial threat towards the left leg, I'm going to come down to that leg, post my head on the floor, and then in one motion I pop up, I shoot either hand through and pull my training partner's knee. Why is that so easy? because my weight is borne on my head. And as a result, it's very easy for me to drag the leg in and hook up on my training partner's leg. And from here, we fall back in the Kani Basami and we're in business. Once again, we start off in a generic double-seated position. We break our training partner's grips. We pommel to the inside, cross-buttock position. As a result, we can fold our legs and come forward on our training partner. I create an initial threat. My opponent starts to react, starts bringing the knees down towards the floor, and I feel it's hard for me to get the attack on my opponent's left leg. No problem. From here, we go down to a head pose, and as a result, I can tripod. From the tripod, both of my hands carry no weight, since my head does everything. Now, I catch, Kani Basami, and as a result, when we sit back, we find ourselves in the perfect attacking position. Other elements that we can bring in here. From double seated, very often I'll use legs as a distraction to go into upper body attacks. From here, we break grips away, we pommel to inside position on either side. It doesn't matter. Just so long as we don't have one foot underneath each hamstring where he can easily re-pommel. Once we get here, we'll fold a leg, we'll pop up on our training partner. He starts protecting his legs by bringing the knees short into his chest. Okay? When we see that, we catch a hold of our training partner's wrist, and now we're in the perfect position to level change up, roll through, and end up in Kimura territory, where we can go to our opponent's back as he turns in, and find ourselves in excellent attacking positions. There's so many things we can do from this position. Don't limit yourself to simply attacking one leg. Make sure you develop the skill of going from leg to leg and legs to upper body and back again. And of course, don't neglect your guard passing. There's no reason from a double-seated position why you can't drive forward and come into pass legs. So for example, a simple thing from here, we go through, pommel, I pop up. My opponent in this situation shortens the legs because he's worried about leg lock danger, no problem. I come over the top, pommel, knee comes in, and we find ourselves in an excellent passing position, drive through and start passing. When you start working between the thread of guard passing, the thread of upper body submissions, the thread of lower body submissions to both legs, you become very difficult to read. It becomes a very exciting position. So many possibilities, so many things you can do. You can always stand up and play a conventional passing game. You can sit back to the legs. You can drive forward to the upper body. Whatever you want. So many things to do. But a few basic principles. First, we want to make sure we limit his pommeling ability. So we hold. Don't use your thumb. You're not trying to hold him with your hand. A human hand cannot control a leg. Instead, we wedge his ankle to our leg. We want to restrict his ability to do the same and immediately pommel into a situation where he can't re-pommel. You don't want to create situations where you just pommel against each other time and time again, where he just comes back inside and you come back and he comes back inside. It's a disaster. Okay? So we make sure that every time we go out and pommel, we pommel to the cross-buttock position. Now when he goes to re-pommel, the gap is so small and it's so easily removed, it's an easy thing now to start going into the legs. If I see my opponent moving away and moving straight away and playing a distance game, there's no reason why we can't come up into the various moves that we saw earlier today. The idea of stepping up to our training partner's hip line so that from here we can use a fallback to go into our training partner's legs and get into a strong breaking position. Almost all of the techniques that we've looked at in this video series can be readily adapted to the double-seated position. Constant practice in the double-seated position will make you a master of two of the most important elements in the leg locking game. The elements of distance, the elements of inside position. If we start in neutral, in a sparring situation from in here, we have to first get used to the idea of pommeling legs in. Every time he pommels a leg in, I have to respond. When he tries to pommel a leg through, we should be pommeling into a position where he can't re-pommel. We need distance. We need to be able to pull our body in. Okay? I need to be able to switch from leg to leg. So as he pushes a leg down and goes over the top, we can go through and re-pommel into his legs on the opposite side. And then from here, all of the finishes that we've been looking at come directly out of these kinds of position. One of the best ways that you can start to accelerate your progress in the leg locking game is to begin in double seated position and do some sparring from there. Of course, you'll need some degree of restraint with both yourself and your training partners. This is not a time to be cranking each other's legs and injuring yourself and taking yourself out of training. Rather, keep a moderate pace with an understanding that no one's going to try to physically hurt each other, but time spent in that position will rapidly accelerate your understanding of the core concepts that we've used throughout this video series.